The White House confirms North Korean troops are being deployed to Russia, possibly to help its fight against Ukraine, amid Moscow's repeated denials. Against this backdrop, President Yoon condemns North Korea's deployment as he hosted his Polish counterpart Andrzej Duda at his office for talks on defense cooperation and more. SK hynix reported its highest ever quarterly revenue from July to September with an operating profit worth $5 billion thanks to high demand for AI memory chips. Hyundai Motor also posted its best third quarter revenue. It's October 24th, 8 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. The U.S. has officially acknowledged that North Korea has sent troops to Russia. Eyes are now on whether the soldiers will actually participate in the war in Ukraine, bringing possible repercussions. Choi Min-jung has our top story.
The White House believes that at least 3,000 North Korean troops have been deployed to Russia. This aligns with the assessment made earlier by South Korea's National Intelligence Service.
We assess that between early to mid-October, North Korea moved at least 3,000 soldiers into eastern Russia. We assess that these soldiers traveled by ship from the Wonsan area in North Korea to Vladivostok, Russia.
While the soldiers are currently in training, the U.S. says it remains unclear whether they will join Russian forces in combat, though it is a highly concerning probability. And if this were to happen, the White House warned that North Korea would become fair targets.
I can tell you one thing, though. If they do deploy to fight against Ukraine, they're fair game. They're fair targets.
Experts say the deployment of thousands of North Korean troops to Russia marks a significant escalation of tensions beyond Europe. The U.S. magazine Foreign Policy describes the deployment as an embarrassing come-down for Moscow, bad news for Ukraine, and a very scary development for South Korea and the rest of the world. The dispatch is troubling for Ukraine, as an anonymous South Korean defense analyst says that North Korea's units, presumed to be special forces, pose a significant threat to both offensive and defensive operations. Another expert in South Korea voices concern over future threats on the Korean peninsula.
I believe the current dispatch of troops by North Korea to Russia is quite worrisome because it could lead to the possibility of Russian military intervention on the Korean peninsula in the event of a future emergency.
To prevent foreign assistance to Russia, the U.S. is expected to announce significant sanctions in the coming days, targeting the, quote, enablers of Russia's war in Ukraine, located outside Russia. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
In related news, Russia has repeated its denial of North Korean troops deployment, while its lawmakers ratified the treaty with Pyongyang for mutual military assistance. Ukraine, for its part, made a video in the Korean language urging the troops to surrender. Cha Yun-kyung has more.
Austria and Germany summoned the heads of North Korea's diplomatic missions in their countries to their respective ministries of foreign affairs on Thursday. The German Foreign Affairs Ministry emphasized that the North's deployment of troops in Russia was an extremely serious threat to peace and security in Europe. Russia, on the other hand, claimed that the reports were false. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin officially confirmed the North's presence in Russia on Wednesday. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova, on the other hand, refused to confirm that directly, saying, "Ask Pyongyang where the North Korean soldiers are." Zakharova said the South Korean government's reaction is only causing confusion, claiming that it was war propaganda by Ukraine to get support for ammunition. In the meantime, Ukraine's Ministry of Defense made a video and uploaded it to its Telegram channel, I Want to Live, to encourage North Korean soldiers to defect. In the video, it says Ukraine will provide need billets, 3 meals a day, and medical facilities.
식단에는 고기, 신선한 야채, 빵이 포함됩니다.
Meanwhile, Russian lawmakers on Thursday ratified a pact with North Korea for mutual military assistance, endorsing the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Treaty. The upper house is expected to follow suit soon. The pact obliges Russia and North Korea to immediately provide military assistance using all means if either is attacked. 차윤경, Arirang News.
South Korea's defense minister calls North Korean troops sent to Russia mere bullet fodder mercenaries, not dispatched soldiers. Such remarks were delivered at a National Assembly audit session on Thursday, where Defense Chief Kim Yong-hyun accused North Korean leader Kim Jong-un of selling his army for an illegal war of aggression. He added that North Korean troops were disguising themselves by wearing Russian uniforms and acting under Russian military command without any operational authority. Meanwhile, he also raised the possibility of the regime launching an ICBM on a normal trajectory ahead of next month's U.S. presidential election. President Yoon called North Korea's deployment in Russia a threat to the security framework of the broader international community as he hosted the Polish president today at his office. Our top office correspondent Kim Do-yeon has this report.
Perhaps a timely summit. President Yoon Suk-yeol on Thursday hosted the president of a key partner and a border country to Ukraine, Poland's Andrzej Duda, for a state visit. President Yoon Suk-yeol took the chance to deliver another statement regarding North Korea's recent deployment of troops to support Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
특히 유엔 헌장과 안보리 결의를 정면으로 위반하는 북한의 러시아 파병은 한반도와 유럽을 넘어 전 세계의 안보를 위협하는 도발이라는 점에 의견을 같이 했습니다.
President Duda took the chance to show appreciation for South Korea's support of Ukraine so far.
We also discussed security issues with President Yoon today, and I expressed my gratitude for South Korea's consistent political and humanitarian support for Ukraine. South Korea has maintained a clear stance against Russia's invasion since the beginning of the war.
President Yoon's support for Ukraine is in fact tied closely with Poland. When he was in Poland for a visit in July last year, he made a surprise trip to Ukraine. The preparation and the visit itself were supported by Poland. In the meantime, Duda's visit completed the two leaders' exchanges of the highest level of diplomatic welcomes, and this was the first state visit by a Polish leader to South Korea in 11 years. And as many expected, one key area of cooperation was the defense industry. The two leaders discussed further strengthening and expanding exchanges in this area. In 2022, Poland signed procurement deals worth 17 trillion won, or $12.3 billion to buy K2 tanks, K9 self-propelled howitzers, Fa-50 light attack aircraft, and Chunmoo multiple rocket launchers from South Korea to bolster its defenses in the wake of the Russia-Ukraine war. The two leaders discussed a deal for a second round of K2 procurement worth $7 billion within this year. And it doesn't stop in the defense industry.
양국은 지금까지 쌓아온 신뢰를 바탕으로 국방 방산 당국 간 정례 협의체를 가동하고 상호 안보와 국방에 기여할 수 있는 협력 방안을 함께 모색해 나갈 것입니다.
Other areas for more cooperation included clean energy and nuclear power, as well as advanced technology. The two leaders also pledged more cultural and civilian exchanges with increased direct flights from the two countries. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Elsewhere, tensions in the Middle East show little signs of easing despite U.S. efforts to find a solution before the presidential election. Israel is conducting airstrikes in Lebanon while Hezbollah is responding with attacks of its own. Ian He has the details.
Smoke filled the air in the southern suburbs of Beirut on Thursday. According to Lebanese state media, 17 Israeli airstrikes hit the region from Wednesday and into the night, destroying 6 buildings. The report noted that this marks one of the most violent nights in the area since the Israel-Hezbollah conflict began about a month ago. Lebanon's health ministry has confirmed at least 1 death and 5 injuries. Meanwhile, Hezbollah confirmed the death of Hashem Safieddine, who was expected to succeed Hassan Nasrallah as leader following his death in an Israeli strike last month.
On the same day, Hezbollah announced that it launched a series of precision missiles into Israel. The Israeli military reported that this triggered air raid sirens in Tel Aviv, delaying U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's departure to Saudi Arabia during his week-long Middle East tour marking his 11th visit to the region. Blinken reiterated his call for Israel to pursue a deal to end the conflict and secure the release of hostages, noting that Israel has achieved most of its strategic objectives concerning Gaza. While the United States views the recent death of a Hamas leader as a potential opportunity to advance ceasefire efforts, there has been no sign of a breakthrough in the ongoing Middle East conflict. Lee In-hee, Arirang News.
Findings for the third quarter show Korea's gross domestic product marked a rather modest growth of 0.1% on quarter, affected by sluggish auto shipments overseas. Moon Hye-ryun explains.
South Korea's economic growth has fallen short of earlier forecasts due to sluggish auto exports. Data from the Bank of Korea on Thursday showed that the country's GDP grew by a modest 0.1% between July and September this year, compared to the previous quarter. While this marked an improvement from the 0.2% contraction in the second quarter, the growth rate fell short of the central bank's earlier forecast in August of 0.5%. The country's GDP has seen fluctuations this year, with a 1.3% increase in the first quarter of the year followed up with the biggest decline seen since 2022. The BOK attributed the sluggish growth to a decline in exports of 0.4% in the third quarter, particularly in non-IT products such as vehicles and chemical goods. It's the first time since the fourth quarter of 2022 that exports have fallen quarter on quarter. Facility renovations at auto production plants as well as partial strikes at auto parts companies have contributed to sluggish auto exports, as well as what is being called a chasm for the electric vehicle market.
For chemical goods and electrical equipment, demand for materials that go into making electronic vehicles and batteries is going down along with lower demand for EVs.
Construction investment also dwindled due to a slump in civil engineering and building construction. Domestic demand, however, showed recovery as expected, led by increases in private consumption of goods and services as well as facility investment. As we move forward, the BOK's August forecast said the country's economy will expand by 0.6% in the next quarter, and the overall annual growth will come to 2.4%. The central bank is expected to release a revised growth forecast in November, taking into account the latest economic data and global developments, meaning it could lower its growth forecast for 2024 due to the weaker-than-expected third-quarter performance. The International Monetary Fund also forecast earlier this week that South Korea's GDP per capita would rise 1.6% this year compared to the previous year, overtaking Japan. Moon Hye-ryun, Arirang News.
In the corporate sector, third quarter business report cards for SK hynix and Hyundai Motor reveal stellar performances, with their revenues soaring on year. Shin Ha-young has more.
The world's second-largest memory chip maker SK hynix achieved its highest ever quarterly revenue, operating profit, and net income in the third quarter. The company announced on Thursday that for the July to September period, it posted an operating profit of a little over 7 trillion Korean won, or around $5 billion, swinging back into the black compared to the same period last year. Its revenue surged 93.8% year-on-year to about $12.7 billion, breaking the record set in the previous quarter. The company's net income reached around $4 billion, also shifting into the black from the same period last year. Both operating profit and net income broke records set during the semiconductor boom in the third quarter of 2018. SK hynix attributed its strong performance to a high demand for AI high-capacity chips and increased sales of premium products such as high-bandwidth memory or HBM semiconductors. Its sales of HBM chips jumped over 70% from the previous quarter and more than 330% year-on-year. SK hynix is a key supplier of HBM to the US AI chip giant NVIDIA. The company plans to start supplying 12-layer HBM3E products in the fourth quarter and expects HBM sales, which made up 30% of total DRAM revenue in the third quarter, to rise to 40% in the fourth quarter. Meanwhile, leading car maker Hyundai Motor reported its highest third-quarter revenue of around $31 billion on Thursday, up 4.7% year-on-year. However, its operating profit dropped 6.5% to around $2.6 billion. The decline was mainly due to warranty expenses related to its Santa Fe SUVs and the effects of a global slowdown in car demand. The company sold just over 1 million vehicles during the third quarter, a decline of over 3% due to slower growth in global markets and rising geopolitical risks. 신하영, Arirang News.
There are now more foreigners living in South Korea than ever before. On Thursday, the Ministry of Interior announced that there are over 2.4 million foreigners in the country, the highest number on available records since 2006. That is 4.8% of the total population. The numbers include all those from other countries, both with or without Korean nationality, as well as their children. The ministry explained that there were especially significant hikes in the number of foreign workers and students, whom it noted were important members of society. The aging population is presenting challenges in certain areas, with fishing villages in the nation no exception. Today, we take a look at what's being done to prevent them from disappearing. Our economics correspondent Lee Soo-jin joins us in the studio. Soo-jin, to start off, in what way the future of fishing villages is at risk?
So first of all, you can tell just by looking at the fishing population that the villages are a significant risk of disappearing. In 2019, the fishing population stood at more than 113,000, but last year it plunged to around 87,000, declining by 40%. Because a key factor leading to demographic decline in these villages is the aging population, the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries has been working with local governments to bring young people to fishing villages by providing opportunities to learn fish techniques, as well as financial support to ensure a stable transition. I met with some young fishermen who made this transition, so let's take a look. Once vibrant and full of life, fishing villages along the coast of South Korea are slowly dying. But Chung Hee-chang, who is in his 30s, moved just 3 months ago to one such village on Yongyu-do Island in the port city of Incheon.
I worked as an IT programmer for 6 or 7 years, but my passion for fishing led me to switch careers.
He meets with the local fishermen almost daily to learn the skills needed for his new job. Chung previously took an education program by the local government, which is encouraging more young people to enter the fisheries industry through hands-on experiences and guest lectures from successful fishermen.
It looks like I can earn more than I did when I worked in an office. You can also take breaks whenever you want.
Ha Do-gun, who also became a fisherman in his 30s after over a decade in the delivery business, mentioned the same perks after 4 years in the profession.
The best part is that if you go out and work more, you'll also make more.
He not only now has 6 deckhands under him, but is also a proud owner of a fishing boat worth around 300 million won, or $220,000 thanks to support funds from the local government. And his success, he says, was only possible due to training from seasoned fishermen like Cha Jong-up, who has over 20 years of experience. But while some locals like Cha are eager to pass down their knowledge, others are less open to newcomers.
Everyone's old. The average age is over 60. I believe we need new fishermen, but there's limited space for casting nets, so locals should share it with newcomers.
In 2023, 48% of the fishing village population were aged 65 and older, more than twice the national average, underscoring the need for younger people. But while financial support and training are crucial, he stressed that the government must also bridge the generational gap through measures that include mediating how fishing spots are used.
Does the loss of fishing villages impact Korea more than it does other nations?
It does actually, and that's why it's such a serious issue, because it impacts not just economic activity, but also national security. Here's what an expert said on this.
We cannot protect such a vast sea area, which is 4.4 times the size of our land, with just our Coast Guard alone. If our fishing villages disappear, we could become significantly vulnerable. Second of all, it would become difficult to ensure a safe and stable supply of seafood.
He added that attracting young people is the most practical long-term solution and suggested diversifying the types of fishing businesses that they can receive support funds for, such as distribution, processing, or tourism.
And it's not just happening here. So how are other countries dealing with this issue?
Right, so our neighboring country, Japan, is another country that is experiencing dramatic declines in its fishing population. Just like in Korea, the population of Japan over 65 years old in fishing villages is greater than that of the country as a whole, and over 30% compared to 40%. It has moved to diversify the economy through tourism ventures such as recreation fishing, and more importantly, laws were revised to allow tourism businesses to have legal access to fishing port facilities to encourage young people to visit and live there. With a steady influx of younger individuals in the future, as well as through a wide range of measures, the economy and the social fabric of coastal regions across the country will be both preserved and revitalized.
All right, Sujin, thank you for your report today.
Thank you for having me.
Tomorrow's skies will be as clear as they were today. Temperatures will drop by about 10 degrees overnight and it will be cold tomorrow morning. Large daily temperature differences will continue for the time being. Please make sure to take a warm jacket when you go out. High waves will be seen on the East Coast tonight. Tomorrow there will be strong winds on the southern coast and Jeju Island. When approaching waterfronts, you should pay attention to avoid any accidents. Tomorrow, Chuncheon will start off at 7 degrees Celsius, Gwangju and Gyeongju 11 degrees. Highs will move up to 23 in Seoul, Daegu and Gyeongju, Gwangju, Busan and Jeju 24 degrees. Inland areas will be generally clear until the weekend, and the daily temperature differences will be large due to the rise of daytime temperatures around the west. Rain is expected mainly in the south and on Jeju Island from the weekend. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.